of nation for children of right and strong. You need better than the quadrant. You need to back us in the country. And they come to Risule from every nation. They can't get the part of me for you. Can't get the part of me for you. You need better than the quadrant. You need to back us in the country. And they come to Risule from every nation. They can't get the part of me for you.
Yes, good evening. Welcome to this special program. The Electoral Reform Coalition presents Saturday Night Live, the ultimate battle for electoral reform in Dominica. We have been on this road for quite a while, and just warned after all these years of talking, of protesting, of advising, of recommendations, and all of these, we think the time has come for us to have true electoral reform going before our parliament so that our members of parliament on both sides of the aisle, government and the opposition, can discuss a common sense reform that is a reform of the people. And therefore, we can have consensus going forward in the interests of peace, love, and unity in our beloved Commonwealth of Dominica. So tonight we're here and we thank God for life and opportunity so that we can this morning get up in our bed and breathe the breath of life, and of course, move around throughout the day and tonight to be here on the big station, Q95 FM radio, to discuss where we are, what is possible to go to reform, to the parliament in terms of reform, and of course, we want this to be done in the interests of every single citizen. This is not just a law that has been passed in a Kabwe setting. It's a law that should be passed in our parliament, which is supposed to be the honorable house, the people's house, and therefore reform must go there as something that is well thought of, and all the recommendations that came from Sir Dennis Byron, Lady Swan, from the OAS, Commonwealth and CARICOM group. Of course, we had even Mayor Motley did something on reform, and we had, of course, the local groups here, Freedom Party, the United Workers' Party, the Concerned Citizens Movement, and of course, the group of civil society made up of the churches, the unions, and the business community. So tonight we're here, Saturday night, it's June, the month of June, and we have designated the month of June as the month, which we said, the ultimate battle for true electoral reform in the Commonwealth of Dominica. So again, good night and welcome. Glad to have you with us and very much appreciative to know that you are with us. We're also asking you out there when you call, please be brief and let's do it in good taste, and want to advise you to focus on the topic at hand this evening. The topic at hand is where we are and where we ought to go as far as the reform process is concerned. And we also want to appeal to you to assist us financially. We made an appeal to you to assist us financially so that we can do the various activities that we have to do to engage the public to ensure that reform is well thought of and well put together in the interest of all of us and so forth. So tonight we have already in studio two beautiful ladies, and they will introduce themselves in a while. We're expecting online two honorable gentlemen who will join us a little later, and we can take it from there. And tonight we are looking forward to have a fantastic discussion. But before we go there, let me just say we on this panel tonight, of course, extend our heartfelt sympathy to the relatives and friends and, of course, siblings and so on, the Catholic community in Dominica, in St. Lucia, the region, and internationally on the passing of Cardinal Felix. And of course, I viewed the funeral in St. Lucia. There was a vigil and a funeral, and they did this extremely well. And I was very moved because we all knew that Cardinal Felix served in St. Lucia for quite a while, I think from the early 80s until he's retired. And he served there, and of course, the people of St. Lucia were very much appreciative of his teaching, his leadership in the Church of St. Lucia. And of course, when he retired, he came back home to Dominica, and then he was, made a cardinal, and the people of St. Lucia called him back to come back to St. Lucia, that they would look after him because he had looked after them for many, many years. And the many speeches that were delivered in St. Lucia at the cathedral there were moving, of persons who said when they met Cardinal Felix, at the time Archbishop Felix, they thought him to be a very kind, loving gentleman, very friendly and jovial. And today the body came in and it was well received by the Catholic community, and I show the people of Dominica generally. And there will be, I think there was some service today, some mass today on his arrival, on the arrival of the body to say, and then there will be the burial sometime next week. So, Rosie, let's just go into telling people who you are, and of course, and then you can make some comment on the Cardinal Felix.
Good evening, Bosso and Paula, right here in studio, and to all the Q95 listeners here on Island and all over the world where you are. Thank you for joining us tonight and on the second program of Electoral Reform Home Stretch, the Ultimate Battle. Yes, Mr. Boston, Cardinal Felix actually is a relative of my husband.
Oh.
Yes, and we've known him for very long, quite a noble man of God. And as you rightly explained, his body arrived here in Dominica today, and next week we'll have a day for viewing. On Tuesday, a day for viewing of clergy and family and officials, and then the funeral on, well, as you know, there was a funeral in St. Lucia, so we'll have something like a service here, special prayers, and then the burial. We have lost really a man of God, a man of the cloth, a real one, a good one that everybody, says the same thing. And to have if you know anything about, the structure of the men of the cloth in Catholic Church, to have a cardinal here in Dominica, that in itself is quite an accomplishment for us. And we can only, pray that, the other men of the cloth, and not only men of the cloth, but we as, Christians on the journey, whether we are Catholic or non-Catholic Christians on the journey, we could take a page from his book, because a Christian man ought to be, a man of integrity, a man, that, fears the Lord and fears the Lord but doesn't fear man. So there's a lot we can learn from him, and we can take several pages from his book. So rest in peace, Cardinal Felix, and that's it. That's it.
Thank you so much. This is Rosie Felix. And of course, we have another beautiful young lady with us. Can you please tell people who you are?
Good evening, this Felix. Good evening, Bosso. Good evening to our listeners at home and abroad, wherever you are this evening, by whatever media that you are listening to. It's a great pleasure to be back here this evening for another discussion in electoral reform. It has been a long, long talk, but before I go there, let me extend my condolences to Nurse Felix, because as a family member as well, I want to extend my heartfelt sympathy to you and your family, and to the Catholics all over Dominica and those in St. Lucia, like you said, Bosso, that when he was in St. Lucia, that they extended a hand to him, and they felt at that time, of age, that they wanted to extend a hand to him because he did to them. The other persons who have lost their loved ones during the course of this week or maybe even last week, I want to extend my deepest condolences to them, because now we have had so many of our young men, just leaving us. So let us keep families in our prayers, because it's very painful and hurtful moments. And there are some persons that it takes a very long time to really get over these type of deaths that we've been having. Electoral reform. This is the way to go in Dominica at this time. It has been a long talk, been a very long journey. And we think now is the time that our Dominican people, we should engage them. We have been doing that, but we believe now it's like almost crunch time. And as we continue with this program this evening, we will elaborate a little more, and we will tell you what our plans are. And we are hoping that you all will join with us in our plan, making our plan success, because Dominica is for each and every one of us.
Thank you, Paulo. Celestine.
Dominican, we need our electoral reform. Tell him, but call the cabinet. Our money can just go to it like that. Dominicans, spend your money. You should perform your duty. How long before we get our reform? We have some election in the interest of one man. But like Egypt, the people need freedom. If you cannot deliver, then give us back our dollars, sir. Stay in your lane. We know you know our country loves to spend the money, sir. Stay in your lane. The people frustrated and tired. Dominicans have taken all they can take. Give us reform before the fall house break. The people know a pool was brigade. Make 29 and blood that was shed.
Again, good evening to you, and we're glad to have you with us this evening. Those of you viewing online, we want to say good night. Nice to have you. A number of persons abroad said they will be tuning. A number of persons in the Caribbean who are not Dominicans, but they're very interested in this discussion, and they believe after all these years, we should settle this reform issue amicably. And of course, we as the Electoral Reform Coalition have done all we can to ensure that there is civility in this whole exercise, that we were able to, engage with a number of persons. We even brought Senator, from Trinidad here, Anil Roberts. We had a very successful town hall at the PSU. We have been to Grand Bay. We have been here in Roseau, public meetings, and other engagement, just to ensure that the right things are done. And some people may say, yes, you talk a lot, you all talk a lot. Time for action, but you have to talk to really sensitize and educate the public on what the issues are, and that people can make informed choices, informed decisions. And it's always wise to have the issues properly explored and of course to show that you're doing the right thing. You are following the protocol and so forth. Now, of course, to say to you that only some sections of the legislation that need amendment and others omitted sections or the omitted sections to be reintroduced or to be introduced and so forth. We thought of getting now a team of lawyers who will engage with us to make the necessary changes and to present the revised draft as the people's legislation. Now, the work we have done thus far, we've had the input of some lawyers. We want to thank them so much and say that shows that these people are interested in the welfare and well-being of our country and that the good laws go before Parliament, because sometimes we can discuss, but the legal language is very important because the law has to be properly, drafted and can find itself in conformity with our Constitution. So, of course, we want to thank, of course, in a special way, the President of Dominica who have engaged with us. The office have been very efficient in terms of when we send out a correspondent, they always respond and so forth. And if a date was suggested and they're unable to make that date, they let us know and suggest a date. We cannot say the same thing for the office of the Prime Minister and so forth. And the Prime Minister's office and the whole of that office, no matter what is the name of the Prime Minister and what party the Prime Minister is, the name of that person ought to be in the office, ought to serve the public and respect the public. And when you're written to be able to respond and, let whoever wrote, let them know that you receive the letter and what the decision is. But sometimes you just ignore it and so forth. And that is where things are with us. And we just want to ensure that the right things are done and so forth. So, of course, we have in studio this, as I said, beautiful ladies. Yes, and to ensure that the whole discussion takes off. So, Paula will come to you in just a while. Let us just give us a little again of Checo there,
So if you don't deliver for what he fools was Dominicans, we need to fight for what we believe. Enough talking, time for action. We need reform, we need vote and God. The people pressurizing, they're ready for action. How long before we get our reform? If we vote leaders for the ID, we could vote for a dead family. And before ballot done count, landslide victory.
Electoral reform this Saturday and every Saturday in June.
And let me make it very clear to them that this long drawn out consultation is over.
That's not the case. The people will speak. The people's voices will be heard in the ERC's ultimate battle for appropriate electoral reform in June.
What everybody understands fundamental, has been critical, has been necessary, is not there as yet in the legislation.
So Dennis Byron was paid thousands of dollars. Is Roosevelt scared listening? Has he scrapped Byron's report? Listen this week to Saturday Night Live, 8 to 10 p.m.
Once this document is in my hands, I will go through it. I'll take my time and go through page by page, line by line, clause by clause, and I will inform the people of Dominica what is in the document.
ERC, Saturday Night Live, 8 to 10 p.m. every Saturday during the month of June. Let your voices be heard in the ERC's ultimate battle for electoral reform on Q95.
Yes, we're back again, and we want to thank you if you're just joining in. A number of persons sending messages, and they're in. The Honorable Lennox Linton is with us in studio, so let's allow him to introduce himself. Well, I said who he is already, but he'll do better than I can do it.
You're going to let me introduce myself after you've just introduced me?
That's right, yes.
Very well.
You got it
Yeah,
twice.
good evening, boss. Good evening, ladies. Paula, Rosie, good to be with you. All is well? Yeah, you look well. You look well. Mm-hmm. Grâce de Dieu. Okay. And well, it's always nice to participate in discussions of this nature. Always good. Always good to talk to the people of Dominica about their business, especially business that is this important. And really, Johnson Boston, I don't see much else that we are engaged with in Dominica that is more important than this. That's because this is about the right of the people to elect their representation in government with their votes of conscience, as opposed to the dollar bills or the bribes or the influences of other people. It has to be as clean and as pure a vote as possible to give legitimacy to the representation that the people are choosing. And this, I always remind people, is government of the people, by the people, for the people, as a key defining feature of democracy. And Dominicans find themselves in a situation where that right that belongs to them has been captured, has been taken away by one man and his gang in government over the last 2 decades. And that fight to get us back to a situation where our electoral process is able to give us free and fair elections is a fight that belongs to all of us. Because you see the consequences of not having free and fair elections, of having elections under the control, the electoral process, under the control of people who will bribe, who will cheat, who will steal elections. They then turn around and do what they want with the people's government. They then turn around and do what they want with the people's resources. Look at just a couple of days ago. In this reality that we are in Dominica, a head of government tells the people, if you're working for $1,000, the government is paying you $1,000, then you are able to save $200. And he's going to show them how they can save $200. This is a man who, as the head of government, costs the state $125,000 a month. Between the rent, the operating expenses for the residence of the Prime Minister, the transportation services, the security, all of the other costs that add up. And then when you pile his salary onto that, plus the salary of his wife, who is also Minister of Government, the people are paying to that household $125,000 a month. Enough to pay 125 NEP workers.
That's right.
But he tells one of them, on that little $1,000 you get, you are able to save $200 because you can do this and you can do that. As he's saying that, the brand name clothing that he dresses up in costs in excess of $25,000 an outfit. When you check the cost of the shoes and the cost of the pants and the cost of the shirt and the cost of the belt and the cost of the jacket, easily in excess of $25,000. One NEP worker has to work for 2 whole years to be able to meet the cost of one outfit, one designer outfit of the Prime Minister of Dominica. But he tells them on the $1,000 that you get, you're able to save $200. He doesn't pay lights. He doesn't pay light bill. He doesn't pay water bill. All of that is paid for him. He has internet services. He has everything.
Gas.
He doesn't pay for gas. He doesn't pay for transportation. All of that is given to him, plus his big salary and plus the big house rent.
Yeah.
But the people who are struggling to meet those things on $1,000, he tells them how they can save $200. That is what you get when you are unable to elect your government. Because all around the world, people would find that kind of conduct abusive, corrupt, and certainly not in the people's interest. And they would use their sanction, the sanction of their vote, to ensure that they set it right at the level of their government. So voting, elections have consequences, and allowing your electoral process to be taken over by special interests, in this case, the leader of government for the last 20 years and his gang, has consequences as well. And it is the responsibility of all the citizens of Dominica acting together to reclaim that process through reforms. And that is why we're having this difficulty. We're having this difficulty because this man who has benefited from all these years of stealing elections is not about to just give it up. But it does not belong to him. And this is what defines the moment in which we are right now, which requires serious action from the people of Dominica. And I'm happy to be here tonight with you, Bosso, and the ladies, and happy to be sharing with the people who are following us on Q95 and the people who are with us online as well in this very important conversation.
I think the statement you made a while ago deserved this song. Let's see if we can get this song from Gregory Rabes. Go wash na shimela.
Ni moun ki sav sa pou fè, sa ki pa sav sa pou yo fè. An an moun ki asis gade, tik tan lot moun finiti we. Ni moun ki ke babye, e nun ki ke pou gane. Yo 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 kome tama shashime.
Expressed during this program are not necessarily those of Wise Q95 FM Radio. Wise Q95 FM Radio has not been able to independently verify the factual correctness or the allegations and statements made during the course of this program and cannot vouch for their accuracy. Therefore, Wise Q95 FM Radio will not accept any responsibility or liability for the statements or allegations made in the course of this program.
Yes, a bunch of keys was found on the bayfront. So anyone who lost a bunch of keys, you can contact us here if you're in town. you can come into the studio here and pick it up. If you're not in town and you're far from town, then you can arrange to pick it up. Tomorrow is Sunday, means that you can pick it up on Monday, or I can give you my number, which is 276-0387, 276-0387. See if you could call me or send me a message during the course of this program. I can hold it for you and you can pick it up at my home in Jimmet. We just call me and we arrange how we do that. So again, 276-0387. Okay, Paula, we're on the ground and we're hearing people. There are those who may not really pay attention to reform because as far as they're concerned, their party's in power and what they do, they do. But I mean, your party can be a party this time, not your party the next time around. But your country is always your country, and therefore you ought to ensure that the right things are being done in your country. I know you're a person always on the move, on the ground. What are your reactions? What are you hearing from the people out there? What are they saying in terms of their own input?
But so for the past 2 weeks, I had been out there a few times. I don't know if I should say we're in Dominica, but I will leave it as a secret for now because I believe we have to start, really putting our strategies together. And you are hearing the same talk over and over again. You are hearing it from the youths, you are hearing it from the middle-aged people, you are hearing it from the elderly people. And one of the things when I speak to, based on the age of the people, there are a number of scenarios that I try to explain, break it down in the layman terms for the people. And I remember in 2019, and people were saying that I'm going to take the money anyway. No, you are not hearing that kind of talk anymore. People are saying that they are tired and they need a change of government. People are not even telling you, oh, I want to go to financial center to see what I get. What you are hearing from the young people, especially those working with NEP, they are complaining a lot about working and not able to get pay, either at the end of the fortnight or at the end of the month. When you tell me, like Mr. Linton said earlier, you are hearing this gentleman saying about $1,000 and they should save $200 and all of that. When you have to work for a month and you are going into the first week or you have already completed the first week going into the second week and you have your bills to pay, you have children to take care of, everything is rising. You had the rising of the increase of the water bill. Now you're hearing about garbage increase. And these people are telling you they're already not even getting anything much. So when I go out there and I speak to the people, I draw a number of references for them. And these people are saying they are ready for a change. They're no longer talking about where they got this money in 2019 and, elections before. All they are saying we need a change. And I'm saying to Dominicans, electoral reform should be the talk. Because when you have leaders who've been in office for so many years, they feel so comfortable and they figure out that they do not have to do anything for the people. They have now become the masters of the people. And they believe like they can just say what they want, when they want, and do how they want. Like when you are hearing Roosevelt is saying by the stroke of a pen that he can just cancel the NEP, cancel the money that he's giving. The people have to know that this is not his money, this is the state money. And this is the reason why we're supposed to make the demands for all that is required for electoral reform. Because Dominicans would have remembered the amount of money that was paid to Dennis Byron. And after Dennis Byron have done a job for the man who said that he believed that Dennis Byron was going to do the right thing. At the end of it, he still bypassed what Dennis Byron had done for him because it was not in his favor. And he went ahead and then paid someone else to do what he believed would have been in his favor. And it is still not in his favor. And the people of Dominica are saying electoral reform is the way to go. And we cannot continue with the same process and expecting different results. And we are saying that the people of Dominica, we need to stand up now and show this man that Dominica doesn't belong to him. Dominica belongs to us. And it doesn't matter what political party that you have supported before. We are saying we need to come together as one and for us to do the right thing. And we, the people, supposed to show these people who believe that they are our masters. We're supposed to show them that we have the power in our hands and not them. They doesn't have that power. So you go out there and you meet the people, they are saying, I believe it's time for a change. And I know Dominicans, those listening overseas, those of you who are accustomed of coming down to Dominica, you vote today and you leave the next day. We are saying none of this anymore. We are saying we the people living here in Dominica, the decisions is for us to make. And we believe it's time that we do what we have to do. And we just have to take our country back.
I'm hearing a number of persons talking, and you even listen to the shows, the talk show here, and you hear people talking and really saying that they've had enough in terms of the delay and the trickery that is really surrounding the whole electoral reform issue. And I mean, people have reached a point where they think the government is really openly demonstrating to the world that they have something to hide. And therefore, they will not do the right thing to ensure that there is a level playing field for every body, every party who want to participate can be on the same level to participate. And therefore, I think people are talking and we are saying, from the standpoint of the electoral reform coalition, if the partners of the UWP, the Freedom Party, the Consensus Movement, all of these groups are involved, are saying collectively that we will not give up on advising, on making recommendations to ensure that we have the right thing done. And the people of Dominica, we should not ignore them in the equation, and therefore they are fully involved in our engagement in this exercise to ensure that they continue to be sensitized and educated on the issue of reform. Then, Rosie, I know you have been on the move for some time with Rosie Spark, and have been doing a fantastic job being engaged in women's matters as well as the general issues confronting the country, and this one, which is so important, and Mr. Linton made the point in his introduction earlier on, that these electoral reform is a very important thing for any country, because that's where your government, members of parliament, and cabinet are determined, and so on. But I mean, after this long period of discussion, of engagement, I mean, the Prime Minister is doing what I think is in his interests and is behaving even arrogantly about it. What is your view? How do you view that behavior?
Also, as you know, the election process is supposed to be a sacred process, and ours, has been tainted for a while. Hence, we are where we are at, requesting for electoral reform. And if we're saying it is a sacred process, and we are making requests, and granted, we've consulted, everyone possible on that, and from the lowest or the most ordinary man to the man in the highest office has an opinion on electoral reform, has a contribution to make. And we did that. Again, we all agreed that, that is a sacred process. So the prime minister is denying us the factors, the principles of making that process sacred. If he doesn't want that, this says he's it's either you for something good, or if you're not for something good, you're bad. So a denial of that sacred process is telling us that you just against the process. You cannot be for the process one way and halfway, or in a way that doesn't make it, a sacred process. Because what we have seen that he has put forward to us is legalizing cheating and stealing. So if you're going to legalize stealing and cheating using the Constitution, we are going far from what we call a sacred process. Even worse than a tainted process, it would be an evil process. Also, very important, we know the electoral process is an important tenet of our democracy. And if this is not done well, then you are further, instead of strengthening our democracy, you are violating it. Weakening it is too weak a word. I think you are raping the democracy if you are going to be putting, where the people are asking to strengthen our democracy, strengthen our electoral reform, and you are looking to put legislation in place that would afford you your dream, your desire, your ambition to stay in power forever and ever. That is, to my mind, just raping the democracy of the country. Additionally, by doing those things, he's forcing himself on the people, and which I couldn't have used a better word, but when a man forces himself on a woman, what do we call that? Rape. So you're raping the democracy, and it's abuse. We have many types of abuse: child abuse, domestic abuse, psychological abuse. I haven't seen much, we don't talk much about governmental abuse. And this is exactly what the Prime Minister of Dominica is doing to us. He's just, with the proposals he's made for the Constitution, he's brought the abuse of Dominica to the next level. You remember some years ago at some election, their motto was next level. Well, with this Constitution there, with this legislation for electoral reform that the Prime Minister is bringing forward, squandering our money that was spent on Mr. Byron, and now giving us something else. And by the way, one of our colleagues raised the important point. Who are the people who did this other proposal, and how much were they paid? For the last so many budgets, we always hear that the public service is there's a lot of wastage. Who is more guilty of squandering the money of Dominica than this prime minister? And he's using our money to abuse us, psychologically and otherwise. So this piece of legislation and he needs to tell us who prepared it. That is a further abuse of us, of the electorate. And not finally, but I would say that last point for now, it's a denial. Mr. Skerritt is denying Dominica, he's denying other people in Dominica the opportunity to contribute to the development of Dominica. When you have a free and fair election, the people, it's their right to vote who they want to govern. And if the laws are unfair, naturally the process will be unfair. Election has consequences. If it's a good process, the consequences will be good. If it's a bad process, the consequences will be bad. And you earlier asked Paula, what are people saying? And people are fed up. They don't want their free money anymore. They just want to change. And two very important areas that are suffering, significantly as a result of this government um, stealing their way into office is our economy and everything else. The economy affects everything else. Health system, the education system, everything is affected. And so my in a nutshell, Prime Minister, and by the way, let me say, you ask about the Prime Minister, but is he and his whole cabinet and Dominica Labour Party, every parliamentarian, those who were voted honestly or those who stole their way, those who were bribed to represent, whatever the case may be, they are all responsible for this, where we are now. Say, for example, the last sham election, where all of Dominica, including labor rights, have been saying, yes, we need electoral reform. The opposition says we're not going into election, we're not going to participate unless we have. You're calling a sham election, you're bringing in new candidates, your old and new candidates are running for election, and we do not have. Where were they before they ran? When they're hearing the call for election? So in my mind, they are as guilty as Roosevelt Skerrit. In denying us, they're just as dishonest, they're just as deceitful, what do we call them, enablers. And when you deny a people what is rightfully theirs, what is their right to do, to elect a government of their choice, it's an abuse of the people, and it's a national it's a travesty on the nation. That's my take at this point.
Yes, thank you, Rosie. And you put it right that this behavior is really, if you like, this group of labor rights in government, they came together not to focus on uplifting the country and its people, but to get their salary, yes, and to cooperate on evil, do things that are not right. And we have been talking about all of these things for years. And he hired Sir Dennis Byron, went to Parliament, and make a big thing about it. And we felt, let's give Dennis Byron a break to see what will come out of him. And paid by the government, not the opposition. And he came out with some recommendation, including campaign financing, because he recognized, based on what was happening, that the playing field here was not level. And if you encourage that to continue, you can find a lot of dirty money in our campaign or election. I remember we met a group of persons who were willing to fund one of our campaign, and they said, we will ensure that you all win. What does that mean? If somebody is in my way to win, they might be in trouble, right? But then at some point, while in government, just leave the waterway open for some time. So it means there'll be a lot of deals being made if we in the opposition, UWP, the Freedom Party, and whoever else, are not solid in what we believe in terms of free and fair election and to have good monies, because you need money, obviously, for certain campaign stuff. But this kind of monies that we're seeing and this kind of influence that the president, the incumbent, have is really, and you made the point, is destroying our ability as a country to build influential persons in our system of governance and to have our children who go to school and so forth and others being able to make a solid contribution to the growth and development of the country and its people. And Mr. Linton, you have been in this for quite some time. You have been voicing your opinion, and There are those who love it, those who don't, who for certain reasons may not like it. But at the end of the day, what you're bringing forth is to caution the country from getting trapped into things that will hurt us in the future, set by this government in terms of the kind of money
Hurting us now.
that they'll bring.
Things that are hurting us now and will hurt us more in the future
Yes,
if we don't take action.
that's right.
And we have to stop leaving the action that is to be taken to other people. It right now it is Scared and his gang versus the people of Dominica on this very vital subject of electoral reform. And you're talking about the corruption and the influence of big money as a taint on the process. What did the CCJ tell us in 2022 July? They said that you should not go into another election without removing these or similar taints, because they were very worried based on what they saw with how the process of the 2019 elections was conducted. They said there were grave concerns, and therefore future elections ought not to be conducted without the removal of these taints. That was their way of saying you have an electoral process that is poisoned. It is not fit for the purpose of giving you what you deserve as a democracy, which is free and fair elections. And all of the recommendations made over the years by election observer missions and so on that have come to see our elections are consistent with the need to fix certain things about that process, which is why back in 2008, the Electoral Commission at the time arrived at a decision that it was going to do two things for the process. Number one, it was going to ensure that the list of voters was cleansed, and it was going to deal with this matter where you have so many more people on the voters register than you have actually living in Dominica. And then they were also going to issue ID cards for voting. It was branded as madness going on at the commission. This business of cleaning the voters list and issuing ID cards for voting, two very basic elements of reform of the process. They took it on from day one, call it madness, and deemed it to be an impediment to Roosevelt Skerritt's re-election legacy. And if you notice everything that has gone on from there, the fact that this was 16 years ago and we still don't have ID cards, we still almost as though we're begging somebody to give us ID cards and begging somebody to clean the voters list for us. It tells you what has been done in the last 16 years on the agenda of protecting Roosevelt Skerritt's legacy. Because what they're saying in that email is that, we know what we're going to do already. You will not win elections if we fix the process. If the process is no longer available to be manipulated as we plan to manipulate it, if the process is no longer available to facilitate us cheating and stealing, then you'll not win. So we have to keep it as it is, which is what they have done cleverly for all this time, and in more recent times now, proposing legislation that is going to make things even worse than they have been. So this is not really reform now. We're talking about deforming the process. And this is where the people of Dominica come in. But you were talking about the decision not to have any campaign finance regulations in the House of Assembly Elections Act, as was clearly proposed by Sir Dennis Byron. And as we, in the different interest groups, political parties, civil society organizations through the years have advocated for. But you see, it's important for that taint to remain on the process for Roosevelt Skerritt, because then he can do what he wants. He can continue the practice of spending money that nobody knows where it comes from and using the people's money to do whatever he wants at election time. Notice how expensive elections have become in Dominica if all of us have to follow his leader. We have to find millions and millions of dollars to go and bring people from overseas to vote. We have to find millions of dollars to bring entertainers to entertain them. We have to find millions of dollars to put up big fancy stages. We have to find millions of dollars to go to people's homes with with money in in little envelopes and T-shirts and so on. We have to have this expensive, outrageous campaign, right? Which is not about telling people what our message is and leaving the choice to their votes of conscience. It's about buying them over. So bribery, so treating, taints on the process become important to the way in which he has stolen elections in Dominica and doesn't want to move away from that. The question of distorting the right to vote, where now they're saying once your name comes on the register, then your name must always be on the register regardless of how long you have been living outside of Dominica. But that's a violation of the constitutional right, because the constitutional right is conferred on those citizens of the country who are 18 and over and reside in a certain polling district in Dominica. That's how you get on the register. So if you qualify that way to be on the register, obviously there has to be something to disqualify you from the register if you're no longer ordinarily resident in the same polling district that put you on the register. Now, in the law, in the legislation, they say if you move your polling district, then you can be transferred. That's fine. So you're in Dominica, you're no longer in a polling district in Soufriere, you're now in a polling district in Marigot. So you can transfer from Soufriere to Marigot. Your name is on the register, you just transferred. But if you're coming from the polling district in Soufriere and now you are in New York living, where are they going to put you on the register? So, Skerritt himself says there's something absurd about living in New York and expecting the PAL rep for Soufriere or wherever in Dominica to be representing your interests when the roads in New York are potholes. You have to see your PAL rep. He has to represent you. That is what you're voting for. It is an election for representatives to the House of Assembly, which is the highest decision-making body in the country and from where government is constituted. Right? So let us understand that when he says he no longer wants any disqualification of persons who've been living overseas for more than 5 years or for a certain period of time, what he's doing is protecting the pool of people living overseas that he can manipulate with an airline ticket, with spending money to come down and make a decision, no longer about where they reside. They're not making decisions about representation where they reside because they're no longer resident there. He says, where you're living, where you're earning your money, that's where you're resident. That's where you're ordinarily resident. He says that. But the same person wants to have a system. He's giving us a system now where it will be normal, it will be legal for you not to be living in the polling district, but to be voting for representation in the polling district. That's not what the Constitution intended. And that distortion of the right to vote, is a key taint on the process, has to be dealt with. Another key one is the question of fraud. And I don't know if you remember in the reading of the Byron report, Byron cited the importance of this voter ID card business to deal with issues like voting multiple times, voting in the name of the dead, or voting with fake identities. And he had said, let me quote it here, the introduction of voter identification cards to persons registered as electors, supported with biometric data, was considered one of the most important reforms by almost everyone. This was regarded as essential to eliminate or minimize a wide variety of fraudulent conduct at elections. Taints, we're talking about taints now, including impersonation and multiple voting. So remember, going back to 2008, the Electoral Commission said, we will have ID cards, we will clean the list. It is coming back here now in the recommendation of Dennis Barrett as a key recommendation that almost everybody agreed to. And the ID card would have biometric data, facial recognition, fingerprints. It would have your unique ID number. It would have your registration number. It would have your polling district. It would have your address, etc. Right? The legislation that they're proposing, after they made a big song and dance about national ID card, they say, okay, you will have, what we'll have is a vote, we'll call it a voter ID card. But they're not prescribing in law that it must have the biometric data. They're not prescribing in law what should be on the card. Identification number, voter registration number. They're not prescribing that. They're leaving it to the discretion of the chief elections officer to decide whether it will be there. And when you see those games being played, you know what they're doing is just tinkering with the process and trying to have a situation remain where they're lying, they're cheating, they're stealing of elections in Dominica will be protected, will be normalized. All right. So we also have things like the rigging of the election, tampering with ballots, altering the count of votes, and these unlawful recounts. So you're aware, the boss of the practice now that they're developing, that they count until they win? They did that to Thompson Fontaine in 2014. They count until they win. Right? And on this question now, bribery and treating, right? A huge elephant in our election room over the years. It is on steroids, where you can get all this money that God alone knows. Well, God knows, and God tells us a lot of it comes from the sale of our passports. Millions and millions of dollars you used to pay the airline tickets of people, to bring them into Dominica, to give them spending money, and for them to vote for you. All we have said is that you cannot do that. You should not be allowed to do that. The process should not allow you to do that. We cannot have an election, an electoral process that permits anybody, any individual or any political party to be involved in that kind of corrupt behavior. Now, in 2022, we had an election, the sham election of 2022. Did you see anybody coming from overseas? Was there anybody coming from overseas? Melville Hall was like an international airport in 2019. Where were the people in 2022? Nobody came because United Workers' Party was not contesting the election. They didn't feel they had any challenge worthwhile, so there was no need to pay to bring in people to vote. But they have done it big time in 2009, 2014, 2019. And they don't expect to be sanctioned for it. We're saying Halsbury's Laws of England is clear that the payment or the promise of payment for the transportation expenses of voter to come home to vote on the condition expressed or implied that particular candidate will vote for that particular voter will vote for particular candidate or party is bribery. And we wanted a clarification of free entertainment treating as an election offense in the law. Let's not play around with it. Let's not have the law in a situation where you can manipulate it to do what you know is wrong, right? They refuse to do that. And on this question of the big money, Bosso, it's an issue. It is an issue. Nowhere in the world do we have electoral processes where people don't seek to protect the vote from purchase, right? People do what they feel they can get away with, but we have to have a system where we build in these safeguards. What we're looking to do is to fix our system in which we elect government to ensure it is free for all, it is fair to all. And then you have the situation of the abuse of public resources. The Commonwealth Observer Mission, right, in 2014, spoke about abuses of public resources and said that it played a part in the outcome of the elections. And so that election was not necessarily fair because of the abuse, which included lack of impartiality in the provision of public services. In other words, they're going around taking the people's money available through the government to give who they want to buy votes and to buy influence, and clear breaches of civil service staff regulations where public servants are openly politically partisan and assist in distribution and provision of government services and goods. That is for votes. That ought not to be happening. You need a system where the people's votes are protected from that sort of corrupt behavior. They will not do it. So all the recommendations made in the area of removing those stains from the process, this legislation the Scared has going before the parliament now ignores that. Although you had recommendations for dealing with at least some of them in the Dennis Byron report, in Dennis Byron recommendations. Then you have media bias. We know what it is for media coverage to be skewed or unfair and disproportionately favoring one candidate or party over the others. We've had all of that. The Labour Party has had the media to itself to do what it wants, especially in election time. Other people get shut out. There are jurisdictions where, especially where you're dealing with state media, elections are set aside for that, for that denial of access to people participating in elections. Here they say, in this, we've advocated for it. They say, okay, you will get access to DBS radio. We will do something. But it is not DBS radio alone. In Antigua, it is not state media, it is all media. Nobody should be allowed to be able to tell you no, that you cannot put your message on the radio station, especially election time, or you cannot come and talk on their radio station or their TV station at the wrong election time. You are dealing with the public. This is the public business, and everybody's constitutional rights should be protected and not violated by these media houses because we say some of them are private. No, in Antigua, you have to give access to everybody, whether you are state-owned or whether you're private. And it's the same thing we advocated for down here. We got state-owned, meaning DBS, and I don't even know how it is going to operate. So you look at the whole set of taints that they have refused to do anything about, which means they want a system that is not reformed, that is deformed to suit their purpose. And I have to tell you, my grave disappointment that what we have right now, notwithstanding how much Scarrett says, people say they want reform, but when anything, Mr. Scarrett, reform is not what you say reform is, Reform of the process is exactly what it is. We're fixing it to make it fit for the purpose of free and fair elections. And if what you have does not do that, don't come and tell us it's reform and believe that you're going to be able to force it down our throats. It's not going to happen.
And let's just take into account that people may support the party and they feel that you are a citizen and you're involved in a political party and the party put itself up for election. And they feel you must go in a box or lock yourself in a room and allow things to happen. And then the Prime Minister and his party will legislate, breaking the law, doing things that are not fit with the law. And then they will say, because I've heard people said, well, they want reform because they cannot win without reform. So it tells you that something sinister is going on.
Yeah.
And reform is not about who can win, Reform is about a free process
for everybody to have
a chance.
Right. That's all it is. So it's not about who can win or not win.
Yes.
But they have a system that is preventing people from winning.
Making it this.
Right. They have a system that is allowing only one set of people to win, where the opportunity is for all.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. And what you want is at the end of the election with a free, proper system that the losers can call the winners and say, congratulations, I wish you well, and I'm available to assist where you need me, and so on. But if the system is not fair and you put yourself up, you resign your job at the sacrifice of your family and so forth, and your own self, and then somebody come and beat you unfairly, then for the 5 years, you're not happy. You know where I come from, and therefore the country never settled. And I know there's an example in the region where a prime minister lost his office. He had to resign because he allowed big money to come in. And then when that person who was involved in controlling big money get into trouble, he had no choice but to put himself up to kind of defend the person. And then the country itself recognized it was wrong, and he had to resign. These are examples right in the region. I see you have a caller here. Let's take this caller. Hello, good evening. Again. Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen.
Same to you. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you.
Great.
And how is those big men and those big women inside there? They okay?
Yes.
We well, thanks.
Everybody good.
You hear me clearly?
Very
Yeah,
clear.
very well. We're hearing you.
I
very well.
was in tongue today as usual. And everybody know I beat in my mouth all where I go.
Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that?
Yeah, I have to say what I have to say for people to hear.
Oh, okay.
I eat at me, I sleep at me.
So you're beating your mouth today on electoral reform?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I was on a transport, and while the transport was picking up people waiting, I get the opportunity to talk.
Yes.
So I started saying, Rosa smelling. Rosa, I have my mask because Rosa smells a lot. We're not taking the scent, they're immune to scent. So I say, instead of the man get disinfectant, pay mayors because you had mayors that used to do that before. Hose down Rosa Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We taking people's money and buy shoes. Who tell me say that? One of the greedy people on board. Oh, what is shoes do you? What is living on the shoes? I said, so it's okay to take people's money and buy expensive shoes like that. The person tell me, yes, it is money working for. I said, hallelujah. Look at the people we saying that will change. These people will never change. It's greedy, they're greedy.
Well,
Because those same people, some of them, when they're not getting anything, they say they fed up. As soon as they start getting something, maybe brown envelope in the middle of the night, they turn back again.
yeah.
So with money or what they getting has poisoned them already. I tell them, scare it to do them like Jim Jones, bring them on a savannah, give them Kool-Aid to drink, tell them it will kill you, you know, and they will still drink it.
Okay.
Boas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What's
you.
the-
Yes.
what's- okay.
One second. Hello, good evening. Hello.
Good evening, Dominic. Yeah, hello, good evening.
Good evening to you.
Good evening, Dominica. Good evening, St. Joseph.
Yes,
Good
correct.
evening, Sir Linton.
Good
Good
evening.
evening, Mr. Barker.
Good evening.
Good evening, our hero on the radio station now.
Bonsoir.
I agree with everything all you say. I don't understand a man that calls somebody drumstick. That means to say because the person was going up for president, he was so angry. How can you go up against labor? I have to call you that name to ask to break you down, to mess up your name, for people to laugh at you. Yet still, can we take this man and going to form election reform, going to better it, to support him for election reform. Brothers and sisters, I can tell you, if we cannot get Skerrit out of power, we're in serious trouble. Election have to do with either we get rich or we remain poor or we get middle class. Skerrit way of doing things in Dominica. I don't see that happen in the Virgin Islands. If it was in the Virgin Islands, that place would have catch a fire already. I hear him talk about $1,000 and Mr. Linton, when he used the word 1,000, he talking about majority of these people, you know. And you have to work a whole year to save $2,400, even though you were to build one bedroom apartment and selling it for these people at that rate, they could not even mortgage for 30 years because they will still fall short of $110,000 after 30 years.
Yeah, okay.
When a man talks like that, you can see he's illiterate. The man has no love for people than himself. And I don't understand how Dominicans, even going to think one more chance to give Skerrit another chance to stay in government. God bless Dominic.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think it was a good cut up.
Yeah, Bosso, I want to speak to
Let me take this call. It'll come off. Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, gentlemen.
Yes, good evening to you.
I just want to say quickly.
The ladies in the
Mr.
house.
Leonard-
The ladies in the house.
Don't forget the ladies. Yeah.
The
If
ladies in
Mr.
the
Leonard
house.
Clinton can give us a little bit of a rundown.
Hello.
Yes?
You're not listening to me.
Oh,
I said there's
sorry.
some ladies in the
In the
house.
house.
So we say good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good evening, ladies.
All
Good
right.
evening.
good
sir.
evening.
Sorry about that. I didn't want to take too much time. That you are in a bit of a rush.
Oh, okay. All
I
right.
would like Mr. Leonard Clinton to give us a rundown on the nearby islands or countries that had electoral reform and how it went there. Because it seems it's only Dominica that has this kind of hesitancy against electoral reform.
That's true.
So if Mr. Leonard Clinton can give us a little bit of a rundown on how it went, what were some of the changes that were made, and how the people accepted it on both sides of their political divide. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot.
As far as I know, Dominica is the last remaining country in the Caribbean that is where you don't need an ID card to vote. And in the case of Antigua goes back to 2004. That's 20. It's been 20 years, 2 decades now. Antigua is voting with ID cards, meaning that their process of reform preceded 2004. And I remember the days when they had all those demonstrations and they had all those public meetings, and you had the serial marches every Friday and so on, protesting for and the Labour Party administration under Lester Bird at the time, they introduced changes to the Representation of the People's Act, through which all these things like the ID cards and so on came in. And before the requirement in Antigua by law, I think every 2 election cycles, every 10 years, you have to have a complete registration of voters.
Yes.
So they did a re-registration in 2014, and they reissued ID cards and so on. At that point, the people were asking, well, Baldwin Spencer, when are you going to call the election? One of the responses he gave was, I will call election when I have the assurance from the Electoral Commission that the system is ready for the election.
That's right.
Right? You think you could ever hear anything as honorable as that from the leader of government in Dominica? Even now we're hearing about snap elections. Even after so many years, and even after the Byron report was set aside in 2022 for another sham election without reforms, we're hearing now that we're in the process of even considering the reforms that he has put forward, that he may still go to election before they actually take effect, because that's who he is. And it's almost like though we are in a situation now where we'll have an election every year, every 2 years, or that's all we do. It's a big game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, I want to speak to that, and that's why we are where we are. It all comes back to that bribery thing. Hear what the scripture says about bribery. Deuteronomy chapter 16, verses 18 to 20. It speaks to our election too, yeah? You must not distort justice. You must not show partiality. Those two sounding familiar? And you must not accept bribes. For a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and subverts the cause of justice. When people say they do not know what happened, what the people drink, what spell out over them, it's the bribe that the people have accepted. They have been blinded. Lucy said they have been poisoned. Is the bribe. The word of God is true, you know. Hear what it says about the person who gives bribe. And tell me if that, in fact, the word of God is true. A bribe is a charm to the one who gives it. Wherever he turns, he prospers. Of course, it's not a healthy prosper there, because if you commit a sin to get what you want is not true prosperity, and that is what we have seen with results carried. Nationwide, the people have accepted bribe, and it has blinded them. What is the solution to that? People need to repent. They need to go to confession That is how we'll take out the veil of darkness that over their eyes and over the land, because it is possible to turn around. We must turn around. And that bribery thing, the campaign financing, why you think they want that? They don't want it, so that they can have the resources to continue the bribing. That has worked. That has been very effective for them. It has worked. It has charmed the people, and he himself getting what he wants. We have to go after that, people. You have to repent. All of you that accept bribe, all you have to repent if all you want the change.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, good evening to you.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, we're hearing you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm listening to the program. I just wanted to make a couple comments.
Sure.
First of all, I'll say this, that it is very clear that a man who basically ignores the highest court of the land, which is the CCJ, has other plans. Secondly, do we have intelligence on the ground? Thirdly, this man will stop at nothing to achieve his goals. One of his advisors a few months ago said, if the government removes one name on the list, he's going to sue the government. That's where we are. What we're talking about right now is this. I have heard this for years of this, all what, the ERC, Lennox and the United Workers' Party. I mean, they have explained that in minute detail. Our people know that. But the other side is not listening. They are planning. They're walking on a different path. And their plan for us is that they must be in power. And they will do it by any means necessary. The question is, what are we prepared to do? We're talking about all of those necessary things: voters list, voter ID card, campaign finance reform, equal access to media, etc. Basic things. But about 80% of what we're fighting for has to do with Dominicans who left here, went overseas, away from this, and are coming down to vote because they get a free ticket. It has to do with our local people that are given apartments and given services that they do not deserve, that are being bribed. So the system is rigged in a particular way. We see what is happening with outside contractors. We see what's happening with, a number of things.
Yeah.
And we see the power that is being exercised by those in power. And because of the what is in place, it is almost impossible for them to want to get out of power without strong resistance.
Okay, then,
and it is resistance that will win us this. So what we're talking about there is like a class talking to a teacher talking to his class. We have to get together and get our people out on the ground.
Thank you very much.
And do what is necessary.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
yes,
you.
Sure. Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening, Bosso.
Good evening to you.
Good evening to everyone there, both ladies and gentlemen.
Bonsoir.
Yeah, bonsoir. But so I from Sportshead, right? And you will agree with me whenever I call you radio station, I do not waste a lot of time. But so please allow me to encourage my people in the Soufriere, Sportshead, and Galion area, please. Also,
go right ahead. Go right ahead.
The people who stood and marching rows who say no bail for the alleged murderer, they had loved the PM. But they did the right thing. Had not you all in Soufriere and Sportshead Galion, if you all did not do that, maybe perhaps the alleged murderer could be outside tonight. But you had loved the PM still, but you stood and do the right thing. I am calling upon you all now. I am from Scotland. I am Tony Caesar. My voice is no stranger to you all. Listen to me. What's the amount of garbage around in Scotland? Now is the time for you to say, okay, even if I love my PM, we cannot stand for that. We are going to stand and say, enough is enough. Let me tell you what happened to a man in Scotland. He's my brother-in-law. I'm going to call his name. 395 will not be responsible. Bosso and none of these people in there will not be responsible. My brother-in-law, Clement Davi, he was at the hospital in Roseau. He had a little problem, a little infection in his lungs. Ladies and gentlemen, people of Scotland and Soufriere, they were treating the man's baby aspirin. His son, my nephew, you have to leave Antigua. He's a policeman. Came to Dominica. While he was living in Antigua, the next one was even Chicago. Came to Antigua and he picked up his father, go to Antigua. The brother pick him up in Antigua, straight to Chicago. The same night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, he went to the hospital. He was admitted. Ladies and gentlemen, if this man had stayed in that hospital for 1 day, he would be a dead man. If he denied, John Xavier will stand with evidence.
Okay, then,
ladies and gentlemen, Supreme Court said, hear me, I'm pleading with you all. My adopted mother had a problem, the court had toe. When they cut the toe, 3 days, Lord have mercy, 3 days, there was no antibiotic to administer to her.
Hello, caller.
Oh God, an infection took over before they cut the leg. Before they amputate her, hear me, people. I'm bleeding. Hear me. Before they amputate my adopted mother, my adopted sister had to leave Chicago with every medication needed.
Okay, Tony.
Before they cut the leg and
Tony,
this is why they survived.
Tony, you're not listening.
Hello.
Hello.
I can't even remember the place. I'm bleeding. People of Supreme Court, the time has come. When you almost say no to the madness that is going on and help Dominica, please, I beg you. Please, I beg you. Good night.
Thank you so much. We just want to focus on the electoral reform issues because if other people call and divert the thing, we're going to have an issue.
But you know, if you listen to the passion of the caller and the evidence of the suffering that he's going through, the pain that he's feeling. That's not unique to him, you know. That's widespread around Dominica. Yes. And it is widespread because somehow this government that boasts of spending all the money that they boast of spending, they have healthcare in a crisis. Mm-hmm. Now they can't even take out the trash. Now they can't even take out the country's trash. They have young people unemployed. They have people in construction, heavy equipment, people in the trades, disadvantaged at a time when we're spending the most money we've ever spent on public infrastructure projects, but very little for the people of Dominica. And those who get a little gig in the NEP for $1,000 a month, the Prime Minister tells them, the Prime Minister whose household is taking $125,000 a month from the tax purse is telling them how they can save $200 while he sports outfits, each outfit can pay 25 NEP workers a month.
Yes. Well,
now, when you understand that, mm-hmm. and you understand that ordinarily people would want to have a say in that kind of conduct, that kind of abusive conduct in their government, and would want to say, well, you know, it's time for you to go. What the people are finding is that, no, they cannot move them because the people's electoral process has been hijacked from them.
That's right. And
in the hands of the same people who are abusing them. This is not joke anymore, you know, Bosso. We stop joking now because a man has shown you that what you believe is yours is really his, and he will do what he wants with it. It's not the people's electoral process. It's Roosevelt Skerritt's electoral process as he would like us to believe, and he will do what he wants with it to ensure his winning legacy.
Yes.
The only thing that can stand in the way of him continuing like that is the same people whose process he's abusing. So when we sit down in our homes and we figure, well, oh boy, is Rosie Felix is there, she's on the radio, Paula Celestine is there, Bosso is on the radio, we have other people in the ERC with them, they will do that. All right. There are a song years ago, it said, my wife getting sick. She say we don't speak. Let Lennox and them take care of this corrupt government. Leave it alone. We have our loan. Them boys dangerous. They will victimize us. Right? So everybody can figure, well, what they will lose if they come out to protest, if they come out to show Roosevelt Skerritt that he cannot go to parliament with the legislation as it is. He must make changes that address the issue of free and fair elections in Dominica. Not elections for him and him alone to win. Free and fair elections. That's what the process must cater for. Not elections for Lennox to win, or for Bosso to win, or for Rosie or Paula or anybody else to win. Elections for all of us to have a choice. A choice, a voice, an opportunity based on the votes of conscience of the people outside there. That is the democracy that we're looking for.
Well, let's ask for some.
And we won't settle for less.
Let's ask for some money. Let's ask them for some money.
Greetings, Mr. Abdullah. Salam alaikum. I'm singing to make you aware. Things are bad at home. The local treasury down here is empty, and you in charge of our treasury overseas. Over 6 billion and counting, and we the people down here fronting. Never in our life before, in our Dominica, all our wealth offshore, and our people so poor. We facing a crisis here, so I bypass the leader. We suspect he don't like him anymore. Bring money, Mr. Abdullah, bring money. Everybody from here, bring money. You're not too free, bring money. From our church, we oversee, bring money. The man never see, come see, with all the country money. Buying election and building mansion. Now we going after credit union. You see, we want to set all people.
Yes, we need some money down here to fix our hospital, to fix our roads, to put our people to work, to create life for our country.
Mr. Abdullah,
And
Mr. Abdullah will do
do nothing about it, yes.
But interesting, Bosso, when we talk about money, Mr. Abdullah, the money Mr. Abdullah is in control of is our money.
That's right.
Mr. Skerritt wants to give us the impression it's not our money and nothing is owed to us. Billions of dollars belonging to us is in the hands of Mr. Skerritt foreign friends. And they have weaponized it against us, the people. So we, the people, must put the little we have in support of the fight so that we can recover those monies. One of the ways we will recover the monies is when we change the government, when we insist on important things like free and fair elections and so on. So even now, as the Electoral Reform Coalition is embarking on a series of activities in the month which will require some money, I think you have some.
Yes.
So it's important, people. Whatever you have, it's important to support this. The government takes your taxes. You allow them to do that. You allow them to take your taxes because that's the way the democracy is financed. That's the way our business is run. They take all the money. They have it in taxes. They have it from the sale of passports. And they're using it against the people's interest. The people now must find from the little they have to support the causes that will allow us to get what is right for Dominica.
Yes. So
Right.
let's give them the nickname.
Absolutely. No, you have it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's www.nidclf.org. To www.nicliffe.org. So go there and make a contribution to the effort, to the work that we have to do. We dedicate the month of June as what we call the ultimate fight or battle for true electoral reform here in Dominica. So let us ensure that you support the effort, and you could go on that area there. You can also come here and contribute to us or to the effort at Q95 FM Radio, and you can call the rest of us. My number here is 276-0387. Then Rosie, your number?
617-0833.
And Paul, your number?
275-5766.
275-4567.
Yes, so you can.
One of the easiest numbers.
Numbers to
4567.
And we'll say it again in a while. We'll say it again. But you know, we're talking about the behavior of the government. And I think somebody made the point, probably Rosie made the point earlier on, that we pay Sir Dennis Byron over $600,000. Okay, for the work that he had to do. He hired some lady to draft.
He hired a draftsperson to
go ahead.
to prepare the legislation that would give effect to the reforms he was proposing. And that draft person came at an additional cost of $200,000. So in all, he got $450,000. The draft person got $200,000, $650,000.
Yes. Okay. So we paid him that, and he did this work. I'm not saying we didn't have to review and so forth and consult and strengthen and so on. What we did was that money was paid to him. And then a new group was selected, led by the Attorney General, to do a new set of drafting. All right? And we have what we call the draft legislation of Skerrit and his government. We do not know how much that was paid to them. They haven't disclosed that. So everything is in a kind of a secret.
No, but you have to understand what they did. This group with the Attorney General, from the Attorney General's office, and including whichever other private lawyers they have engaged. It is not they have not done new work, you know. They have simply sought to ensure that what they don't want in there is not there, and what they would like is included. And it's a few of the changes, because you know when you focus on the specific things, you will see what they have done with the right to vote, for example, and the question of the qualification to be on the voters register. You see what they have done with putting no disqualification, and to, as the Labour Party people came into the consultation saying, once your name is on the register, it should always be there. That's a violation of the right to vote. And then you see what they're doing with the ID cards, where they hedging as to whether we'll have biometrics, facial recognition, fingerprints, unique ID number, registration number, polling district number. They want to leave that up to a discretion of the chief elections officer, chief registering officer, as opposed to prescribing it in law. When you look at the refusal to put any clarification for the offense of bribery, of free entertainment treating, and to clarify the law where it regards transportation of voters from overseas, which is a major taint on our election process in Dominica. And in the consultations, you had a whole set of Labour Party people saying, well, what is that campaign finance reform business about? we don't want the public to be paying for the campaigns of political parties. Roosevelt scared put that in their head, and they went all around the country with the foolishness nobody was thinking. Nobody asked for it. It was never in the consultation or the conversations with Dennis Barron during the consultancy, and it didn't appear as a recommendation either. But he made it the red herring to take people's attention away from the necessity to deal with the corrupting influence of big money in the election,
and to divide the country,
hold politicians and political parties accountable for what they raise and what they spend. Right? Critical thing. And then on the question of the access to media and things of that nature, they basically had the Byron work just to insert a few things to make sure, and then in the case of the campaign finance regulations, it was not difficult. They just took it out wholesale. Right? So they took that out wholesale. So that's not work. To take that out, to cut that out, it's not work. And then to fix a few little things here and there to make sure that the system is going to, as represented by legislation, normalizes your corrupt behavior in stealing elections. That's what they did with it. So they actually made, we now move into, we got into reverse gear now. We're moving to legislation that is actually worse than what we had before in terms of upholding free and fair elections in Dominica.
And Mr. Scarrett is so deceitful. He comes on the air and gives us the impression certain things are in the legislation. So he says it, so his people will believe, yes, it is there. And when we go through the document, it's not there at all.
A big shining example of that is the overseas confirmation.
We'll play this clip in a while.
The overseas confirmation. He's saying it's not there, but it is clearly there. Regulation 51.4 clearly provides for the Electoral Commission to set up enrollment centers overseas for the purpose of confirming people on the register.
Yes, let's take this call here and we'll come back. Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening again, gentlemen.
Yes, good evening to you.
Yeah, it's just amazing to me that there is no neighboring democracy within CARICOM who is taking notes of what's happening in Dominica and expressing some concern.
No, they're taking notes. They're taking notes. You haven't yet spoken, but notes have been taken.
They haven't yet spoken. What are they waiting for to speak?
Well, we have to we have to do our work down here first,
Well, I'm asking myself if it's a crime to criticize Roosevelt Skerrit in the CARICOM.
Yes, sir.
I mean, look, CARICOM is a market economy. How about if we go to the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States? Have any of those spoken? And at least can they come up and brag about that they have had their own electoral reform and be proud of it and state what's in it? And encourage Dominica Prime Minister not to interrupt or interfere with, and suggest that he puts the similar legislation in place. I mean, we're supposed to be an Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. I'm just Boston. I'm not a politician, but I'm just wondering why this has not happened already.
Well, let me explain something. Huh? You see these other islands in the Caribbean, they have something we don't have. They maintain some element of being able to deal with government. So people that go into government and do foolishness while they're in government. We seem to have lost that ability in Dominica. Part of it has to do with the capture of the electoral process. But with regard to these leaders, I'm not sure whether a lot of them not sitting there envious of what Roosevelt Skerrit has been able to do in Dominica and looking forward perhaps to the day to come when they'll get their chance. Because we're hearing some strange stories coming out of St. Lucia and St. Kitts now with the Citizenship by Investment program, mirror imaging a lot of what we have been advocating about down here in Dominica, about the transparency and accountability for the funds that are raised under the project, and the fact that billions of dollars belonging to us are in other people's hands overseas doing what they want while people in Dominica are suffering. St. Lucia and St. Kitts seem to be coming to the realization that not much is different there. But in the case of St. Lucia and St. Kitts, all of the noises about what is wrong is coming from somebody in the system, somebody who was at a level of agent with a deal to sell passports to invest in a film industry, and was affected by the fact that other people were allowed to go and undersell the program. So what he is doing is no longer viable, right? But they have people in Dominica who were in the same situation with how Hayden was going after underselling the product of Dominica, the passport, in the market. A lot of people were hurt. Some people moved out of the market because they couldn't keep up with the low prices that Hayden was selling. But they would say nothing. The fortune of St. Kitts and St. Lucia is that they have somebody in the program who was willing to come out and speak and willing to put money now behind investigations and lawsuits challenging people who are responsible for the passport sales of their country to do right by the people. And maybe we'll come to that stage one of these days, because we ourselves, we're trying our little thing. We have a case going before the court anytime now, because we have sent a pre-action letter to the Attorney General's office saying what we are concerned about. We have retained counsel, a King's Counsel in Trinidad and Tobago, very well known, to deal with this matter for us and to get from this program, to get the court, a declaration from the court that will allow the people to get their money back in some way, shape, or form. It has to be, it must be possible. By the way, the House of Dark Secrets in the middle of the capital city of Roseau, they have no tenants yet. They've been there for what? No, almost a year now.
Yes.
Who does that?
Yeah.
Who can afford that? When they asked the Prime Minister, who's head of investments, about it, he said he almost blew some blood pressure.
He got upset, yes. But to add to what you just said, the difference between us, St. Lucia and St. Kitts, the people of St. Lucia and the people of St. Kitts are pretty active on these issues.
Yeah.
I see the Prime Minister of St. Kitts, the former Prime Minister, they are heavily in St. Kitts defending themselves. Yeah. And the people of St. Kitts are pressuring them. You know,
they want to know about their money.
They want to know about their money. In Dominica, people say it's not your business.
It's a few of us
that talking. Yeah, in St. Lucia, I'm looking at St. Lucia on Facebook, and you can see the way in which they have been very active. And in fact, the leader of the opposition in St. Lucia has even gone to court with the speaker, and the court have ruled in quick time. So therefore, these people are not spectators in the process; they're participants in the process. And here we just feel as if, well, it's a few people, and people, if they feel you call a meeting and are well attended, to them is a victory.
Yes. They didn't come.
They don't look at the bigger picture.
It's not their business.
You know,
their business is to facilitate others to destroy their interests. That is their business. Because if somebody at this stage of the game in Dominica, where we, the patriots of this blessed land, are fighting for free and fair elections, and you have people who are standing against that to the point where they will not attend a public meeting. Where we're discussing or protest action, where we're pushing for our right to elect government of the people, by the people, for the people, and the responsibility and the whole responsibility we have to take that away, to rescue that from capture by one man and his gang. Then it's not Dominica you love, right?
Yeah.
It is not your interest you're protecting. You're facilitating somebody to destroy your interest. Because this is about all of us. No man should be allowed to have the electoral process of an entire country and a democracy under his little finger, doing what he wants with it. That is what we're fighting against, and that is what we must succeed with if Dominica is to go forward.
But look at an example. We planned going to Granby a couple months ago to have a meeting. The very Sunday we were going there, the Prime Minister arrived in the morning to go to church. He had not been there for a long time, but he's in church, sharing and discouraging people from coming. And rather, people in their own mind say, the fact that you come today is because you want to deny us the opportunity to engage.
Which is more reason why I'm going.
This is that's what motivates you to go.
They were happy to stay at the home.
Yes, and so forth. And then I saw somebody when I was speaking on Facebook asking, where's the crowd?
No, but they were not there, no. They're not in the crowd, but they're asking where's the crowd.
Where's the crowd? And then Satan, who is really pressing the whole effort of reform, and as you said, have it under his fingertip and so forth. All right? He is using that now to his benefit, while destroying the society as a united society. And you made a point earlier on when he said he went around, and said the opposition want him to take monies from the treasury to pay opposition people, and that was never in the recommendation.
But understand the reality. He's saying that to take people's attention away and to rile up their emotions against United Workers' Party and other political parties, Freedom Party and so on, that want the treasury to give them money, that want to get taxpayers' money for them because they cannot raise money for themselves. Where's the money that the Labour Party uses to campaign? It comes from the sale of Dominican passports. It comes from citizenship sales agents. It comes from all these people that they have been involved in corrupt activities with. Also, it comes from the public purse. I tell people, we had a situation in Dominica recently where, as a result of excessive election year spending in 2019, we have a loan at the National Bank of $125 million. Not that Labour Party people paying, the people of Dominica are paying that $125 million loan that came out of excessive election year spending in Dominica.
Let's take a couple calls. Hello, good evening. All our lights are going.
Yes, good night, Bosso, good night, Lennox, and good night to the ladies in the house.
Yes, good night, yes.
Yeah. Two suggestions. One, Bosso, this program that you're listening to now, we need to get that program on the road. There are 21 constituencies. I think I'm suggesting that the ERC organize in terms of getting the business community involved, getting the people involved to sponsor this town hall of public meetings, to disseminate the type of information that we are hearing here tonight with respect to the whole electoral reform issue, because we know Q is not reaching everywhere, every nook and cranny in Dominica. And this issue is such that we need to make it reach every nook and cranny. So political parties need to combine their resources to get themselves involved in that joint campaign, because it's a campaign that we need to launch across the country, island-wide, town hall style, public meeting style, in every nook and cranny, to bring that message to the people, to explain to them what the up against and so on. And I think that is absolutely necessary, and that should be a priority, a top priority of the ERC. The other suggestion I have is that we need to engage the police hierarchy, and the police force by extension. We need to get the support of the police force. We need to engage the police hierarchy in meetings to find out, to get their views on the legislation. They are part of the legal system. We've heard from the president of the Bar Association, and I think we need to highlight and the contribution from the Bar Association, so that we could encourage all the lawyers to get on board, to encourage people, their clients, their citizens, their parents, their colleagues in the police force. We need to get everybody on board. And the police are very important people, a set of people that we need to get on board, because they are the enforcers. That is our reality. Without the support of the police, security is useless. That is our reality, and we need to start to focus on that so that we could get everybody on board. There are a number of policemen in the force who want electoral reform, who want change. The majority of policemen in the force want change. And that is why we need to engage the leadership, engage the entire force in all different ways, so that we can get the support of the important people, the enforcers of spirit. We can get them on board to support the change, to support
Yes.
the real electoral reform.
Yes.
Thanks a lot for the opportunity, Chair.
Yeah, sure. Our time has run out, but we have quite a lot. And I want to thank the caller for the point you raised, but I'm going to end with that, part of what you've just said, because we have everything. But let me just play the clip from Skerrit where he says one thing in the press conference on St. Curtis, Matthew, on a question, and then on the legislation, the draft legislation, there is something different. Let's just hear it quickly.
Back to some of these significant changes. One, you're going to have the confirmation process where each person who is on the voters list must present himself, avail himself to the Electoral Commission to say, yes, I am Curtis Matthew, this is where I'm voting, this is my ID, etc. And so that your necessary biodata as required by the law will be taken, and then you will be registered, you'll be confirmed as being a bona fide voter in Dominica, and your name shall remain on the voters list. So that's one of the fundamental points. The other fundamental point is that you will require an ID. We are calling it in the law a voter ID card. And that is another fundamental point. Another fundamental point is that persons who currently reside out of Dominica and who are on the voters list, you will have to come to Dominica to have yourself confirmed. So we will not be going to the various capitals around the world to allow this to happen. We want to avoid anybody accusing us of using our embassies or a hotel that is owned by a friend of the government. You know how we are in Dominica. So you'll have to avail yourself in Dominica. So say somebody who is living in the United Kingdom and who wants to remain on the voters list, he or she would have to travel to Dominica to have his name confirmed or her name confirmed on the voters list. So we won't come to London or to Manchester to have you confirmed. That will be done in Dominica.
So that tells you they themselves are not ready with the work that they're doing. So when the Prime Minister said that consultation and so on is over because the fish is in the frying pan,
Yes, in the oil.
and in the oil, whatever the case would be, tells you what he have said to Curtis Matthew in that interview, that they are not ready, really, and so on, because what he says there is not in the draft legislation. And you notice we spoke about qualification. Our forefathers recognized that there will be more people outside, and most of the regions, the other countries in the Caribbean have this, more people outside than people inside. And let us make the point early on. You're voting for a representative. You're voting for a government to govern you and to look after your business in Dominica. And what they had, so they had this 5 year, if you're out for 5 years, uninterrupted, you're not qualified. But that doesn't mean to say you cannot come back on the list if you re-establish your residency. Okay, you can re-establish your residency. After 3 months, you can re-register and back on the list. But once you're out there 5 years and more uninterrupted, that means you can't vote. If you have on the list and you're coming in between the 5 years, then and you're on island and the election is taking place, you can vote or you pay your way and come. But don't wait for comfort and gifts and so on to come and vote, to put the government there on the backs of people who have to live in the country. So what they have done, they have removed that. They opened the floodgates.
Yeah.
So whoever will, whether you're out there for 50 years, you can come and cast a vote once your name is on the list. And that is really...
And once they give them their ticket to come.
And that is really a government governing the country, breaking the law just to stay in power. They're breaking the law, they're violating the law of the country to stay in power. But quickly there, though, I just want to make, and then we will wind up after that. We have the ERC is in action, and we said this month, the month of June, is dedicated for ensuring that the right things are done and we get the proper reform that we are asking for. So we have sent a dossier to the Prime Minister. It was submitted to him and copied to the President, then Her Excellency, and of course it will go to the Electoral Commission. We're sending this to every Prime Minister in the Caribbean, every Prime Minister. We're sending to the OAS, CARICOM, Commonwealth. We're saying to the Regional Security Council, to them. We're saying to the regional media, the local media, so that this thing can be widespread. And we mentioned that I mentioned earlier on, we're getting a group of lawyers who will sit with us to ensure that everything is well put together, the legal language is there, and the document is already prepared, but just to get the legal language in, and we then will have this as the people's legislation for reform. We will move to the constituencies to engage with people. We're asking the parties and every group involved to they themselves take charge, get involved, organized, and so on. So the message can move beyond, let's say, Roseau and get into the communities. We're asking the various constituents to call on their PAL rep, ask them to discuss with them the law, and to give their own input on the law, because your parliament is not just to go to parliament and say the ayes have it. They have to meet with you, discuss with you, let you know what is in the law, and therefore you will make your own input so that we get a good law at the end of the exercise. Then we are calling on the clergy in Dominica, various churches and their members, to intervene on behalf of Dominica, ensure that God is placed in what we're doing. They are there to guide and to advise and to ensure that the government does not pass a law that will only give the government the benefit of rigging our election every election cycle. On the 28th, we're calling you to join us for a walk in Roseau, a walk for reform on the 28th. We'll give you exactly what the time will be. And on the 30th of June, we're calling you to come into Roseau for what we'll describe as a people's parliament. So the entire nation must come into Roseau for the people's parliament, where we'll present to you the legislation we feel that should go to parliament for the members of parliament to debate and pass in the interest of our democracy and of our people. So again, we're appealing to you, please assist us, make donation to the effort, because we put before you what we ourselves are engaged in, and we require your support to make it happen, to make it work. And again, www.nidclf.org. So go there and make a contribution to the effort. And those of you locally, we're asking you to also make a contribution to the effort. So it's already 9 past, so we have to, we could go until tomorrow morning, I suspect, because we have a lot to talk about. And a number of calls were coming in, but it's a bit tight. So, Paula, we want your departing words as we live for tonight.
Well, thank you once again, Bosso. We know how time flies. We wish we had more time because there's a lot more to discuss. Just a reminder to our Dominican people, electoral reform, it's not about what opposition parties want. It's what Dominicans want. I know there are persons who support the Labour Party or Roosevelt Party, and I know even they themselves are saying, I believe it's a good thing. There are some of the diehard Labourites, those that call themselves the Poto. Some of them figure out that if a reform is given, that they may lose some things because, and we're talking about personal things here. But for Dominicans, people who believe in truth, people who believe in justice and fairness, I'm saying this is the way for us to go. And like Mr. Linton said before, this is not a joke. I believe we now have to rise up and get more serious ever than before. And Mr. Roosevelt, leave Lawrence Brumant rest in peace, please. Thank you.
Yes, Bosso, I want to encourage the people who normally, when we ask people to come out and to represent, numbers, speak volumes, and many people are looking from the fence. Professionals, it's always dawn on me. It always hit me that when we have the gatherings, the professionals are not, the poor people of everybody's hurting, but a lot of the poor people, the ordinary man, the elderly, you see them coming out. But the high and proper, the professionals, they're balling on their jobs, or those who don't have jobs, but they're looking on Facebook and they're not coming out. And you have to come out and guard the interests of the nation. You think you're victimized, or you will be victimized, or you will lose. You will need to come out, and we need to get this right this time, once and for all. Roosevelt Skerrit, you're not getting away. We're getting proper electoral reform this year, 2024. Your time is done, sir.
Thank you, Rosie. Lennox, in your winding up, you notice the Prime Minister has declared war on the Electoral Commission. And he said that whatever they say to him, he may not necessarily bound to take it, and so on. So why say to them?
Well, I listened to that and I was saying to myself, what is the necessity of saying that? Why do you say that? Because what the people expect is honorable conduct from those who represent them in every respect, in every aspect. And where you have a situation where the Constitution requires, where legislation that has something to do with elections goes to the Electoral Commission before it is presented to Parliament, the Electoral Commission will review it and provide some feedback on it to the legislators before they go to Parliament. Maybe there's something that they need to consider. Having done that, having fulfilled the constitutional requirement in that regard, the Prime Minister goes on to say that he doesn't have to accept any recommendation coming to him from the Electoral Commission. The Constitution doesn't say he has to accept it. Why do you say it? Why is it necessary to say that? So in other words, they can do what they want. They can come up with the best recommendations. I don't have to listen to them. That is dishonorable conduct. That is conduct that is not in the interest of the people of Dominica. And he knows why he's saying that. If for any reason the Electoral Commission were to come up with suggestions that take him into the zone now of really aligning the electoral process with the requirements of free and fair elections, then he will not want that. So he's saying upfront, you see what I have there? Don't believe while you're coming with anything I send it to you, that's the process. But don't believe you're coming back to me with anything to force me to change that, which is how I intend to normalize my corrupt behavior of stealing elections in Dominica. And Dominicans have to stand up resolutely. They have to set their face against that. Because you see, I am repeating tonight what I've said before, that all we ever wanted was to bring our electoral process in line with the requirements of free and fair elections as the backbone of this democracy and governance in the Commonwealth of Dominica. And these pieces of legislation that are going before the Parliament do not move the needle one bit in that regard. Accordingly, we must reject them decisively. And I want to close, Bosso, with this quote. It's a very important quote from the judgment of the Caribbean Court of Justice in July of 2022, commenting on our elections, when the CCJ told us, without free and fair elections, the preambular value of the creation and maintenance of and respect for lawfully constituted authority would be fatally undermined. The consequences of such a denial of free and fair elections that a reflection on Caribbean history demonstrates include loss of legitimacy, public unrest, and even revolt. REVOLT. In contemporary terms, free and fair elections are so fundamental to the democratic way of life that without it, the very legitimacy and sovereignty of the constitutional state is brought into question. Our constitutional state in Dominica has been in question for a number of years. The time has come when the consequences of the denial of free and fair elections to the people of Dominica by one man must lead to public unrest and even revolt.
Yes.
And even revolt.
Revolt, yes. And
thank you, Bosso. Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Rosie. Thank to the people of Dominica who listen from at home and abroad. And it's always a pleasure. I love you all the time. Thank you. God
yes.
bless.
Well, I have to thank you all for being here tonight. I think we did our very best to again explain so that you, the listeners at home and abroad, can get the gist of what we're saying. And as we said, it's not a joking business, it's a serious matter. And you would be a joker of a party, of a citizen, to sit there, have an interest in your country's development and upliftment of your people, and you send your children to school to learn and to be educated, to be able to participate in the process of development of our country and improvement of our people, and to see wrong things and say nothing and just say, oh, leave it alone, leave them do their thing and so on. You have to show. And I always said it could be you alone who stand up. The record will show that you disagree with what is wrong, okay? And you want what is right at all times for your country and for its people, and that's where you stand. And when you stand in that way, the wicked satanic minds may do what the evil they want to do, but at the end of the day, conscience might prick them and they might repent and come to us and say, you know something? I am doing this for myself. I should change my behavior and do it for the people. Okay? And for that to happen, the people who have a good heart of what is right must not be afraid, must not be ashamed to stand up and say it is wrong. And something you say it is wrong, and Satan may still decide to go ahead and wanting to do it, but the people must decide whether that is what they want and the country they want to live in, or they want something different. I just want to end by saying, I know, for example, in St. Kitts, the Labour Party was in government and they resisted reform. They were forced by the people of St. Kitts to implement reform. And the governor there took it very seriously to ensure that proper reform took place. And he wanted to ensure the opposition were not excluded. And in here, so Dennis Bryan make recommendation in his submission for the electoral reform, for the electoral commission to be strengthened to remove all the party or political influence, partisan influence. They'll still be there, but you bring in people from from society generally to have a balance, and that was rejected and so on. So Dominicans, this is our fight, this is our struggle. Let us all ensure that we stand up and say no to the kind of reform that these guys want to pass in this country to legislate themselves in power. Maybe Skerritt said 50 years in government. And I made the point last time, before you had to have money in the bank, house and land to run for election. Reform changed that. Women could not vote. So when the men voted, they covered the women, they represented the women. Reform gave women the right to vote, to participate. You had to be 21 years of age to vote. And reform got it to 18 years. So at 18 years, you can make an early contribution as to who you elect to represent you in Parliament and to be in your government. So this is work for us to do to ensure the proper reform comes forth in our Parliament this time around for the interest of our democracy, not only for those of us in now, but those of you who want to come in tomorrow into the system. So again, thank you. God bless you all. Have a good night rest. We want to thank the management and staff of Q95 FM Radio, the big station, and Mr. G. Say thank you to you. And of course, to all our listeners at home and abroad, we always appreciate you. Let's end with this song.
Give it to them. It's the story about your karma. Keep on reporting for duty. Because God is so silent, man taking full advantage. So now and then examples are sent to emphasize this message. As a man sow shall he reap, whether or not he believes in it. Nobody can protect you when karma comes back to get you. All man fights to do is wrong, abuse his power, his position, until his karma comes around. Big man like Adam, like Satan, Chavez and Gaddafi, just be begging for mercy, hey, crying like a baby. So all those who think they have power, karma coming. Any minute, any hour, karma coming. When you want to crush a position, karma coming. Today you up, tomorrow you don't, karma coming. Karma comes to kings and powerful men. It's a natural justice thing. No one is exempt. So when a prime minister becomes a kidnapper, then one day he
During
travels.
this program are not necessarily those of Wise Q95 FM radio. Wise Q95 FM radio has not been able to independently verify the factual correctness or the allegations and statements made during the course of this program and cannot vouch for their accuracy. Therefore, Wise Q95 FM radio will not accept any responsibility or liability for the statements or allegations made in the course of this program.